any table that you would like to go. On floor 1 is vendor-sponsored tables, and on floor 2 is just general networking tables. Also, if you need to take a phone call or step away from your desk, you can go into the parking lot, and there's over to the right of your screen, and that is on the first and second floor. If you need help, you can go to the first floor tech support area as well. To switch between floors, just select the elevator number between 1 and 2. We have 2 exciting keynote panels lined up for you today. The first one is acquiring and retaining talent by driving empowerment, equity, and human capital through the Sustainable Development Goals. And the second is innovation, growth, and furthering economic success through the global goals. In between these, we will have vendor and networking times and announce our raffle prizes as well. We're going to end the day with a happy hour, which will showcase some of our winners that were announced yesterday for our recognition program. And it'll be a great time to sip on the beverage of your choice and have some fun networking. You're in really great hands today. Panel 1 will be moderated by Nira Johri, the Sustainability Director at Rich Products. And panel 2 will be moderated by Danielle Harrison, Manager at Business for Social Responsibility. First, we're going to have a little announcement presented by Sherry Peel from Western New York Clean Production Leaders. Sherry is an active member of SBR's project group for our chemical reduction program. Sherry, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Chrisanne. Thanks so much, everybody, for having me here today. I'm coming to you from Seattle. I've actually never lived in Buffalo or Western New York, but you definitely have a firm grip on a piece of my heart because 25 or 30 years ago, I went to school down the road from you at Cornell. While I was studying there, environmental policy, I was introduced to the concept of communities taking environmental health into their own hands through this book that's up on the slide there by Adeline Gordon-Levine. You can probably tell that the book is a little bit battered. That's because it's been with me through all of my moves ever since. The story of Lois Gibbs and her community was formative for me in thinking about the connections, as it says there in the subtitle, between science, politics, and people, and the power of committed people in the face of very imperfect data to work for positive change, improving the health of their families, their communities, and their environment in the face of hazardous chemicals. The situation at Love Canal, sadly, was hardly unique, but the response laid out a roadmap for other communities to use and was foundational for college kids like me at the beginning of their careers. Fast forward 25 years, and I was working for a nonprofit called Clean Production Action, where in long collaboration with companies, NGOs, academics, and governments, we had developed what I think are 2 very important concepts. The first is that of a chemical footprint, which is essentially the mass or volume of inherently hazardous chemicals used over some scope. So that scope could be a product, a company's entire product portfolio, a manufacturing process, a supply chain, or chemicals used in maintaining a facility. And we have been focused initially on products and product portfolios. So in support of measuring and reducing a company's chemical footprints, we developed the Chemical Footprint Project Survey, which outlines best management practices for companies. So with these 2 things, the concept of a chemical footprint and the Chemical Footprint Project Survey, Allie McPherson, who among the many other roles she's played is co-founder of Clean Production Action, thought it would be a great idea to bring these 2 metrics and tools to the companies of Buffalo. So working with Asa Guillermo, the Clean Production Leaders Program was born. So organizations who participated would be introduced to the Clean Production Action tools and then work with the staff of the New York Pollution Prevention Institute, namely Chuck Ruffing and Kate Winnebeck, to implement them with the goals of measuring and working to reduce their chemical footprints. So we've had a great experience working with 4 organizations. TapeCon, led by Steve Davis, and this particular work led by Mary Sennett and Tiffany Bartz. Catholic Health with David Vitka and Patrick Gorage. Niagara Malt with Robert Johnson and Brenda Young, and Madiba Janitorial with Rubens Mukunzi. And what was interesting was that the benefit, we hope, went both ways. All four of these organizations have taken these tools and begun to look at their own chemical footprints, measure the chemical footprints, look at and measure their own management practices against what we've identified as best management practices. But then they've actually also pushed back on us, because while we had been focused initially on products and product portfolios, each of these organizations had brought questions to us about, well, how does this apply to X? So for example, TapeCon participated in our manufacturing chemical footprint pilot. So their participation, along with two other very large companies, is helping us define how companies around the world will measure the chemical footprints of their manufacturing processes. Catholic Health, Niagara Malt, and Madiba Janitorial have all helped us think about how you measure the chemical footprints of facilities. So for me, this is coming full circle. As with Love Canal, where the communities of the Buffalo region and Western New York served as leaders around the world for how do you address hazardous chemicals, in this case, unfortunately, already in the environment. Now these organizations are at the front end of this. And how do you avoid using hazardous chemicals to begin with? So today I really want to thank all four of these organizations for their participation. We're presenting them with this badge, the Western New York Clean Production Leaders Program participant, that they can use on their websites and in their social media. And invite any of the rest of you, if you're interested in this work, to join, contact me at Clean Production Action. We have actually the CFP survey is open now. We'd be delighted to work with you. But really want to recognize these four companies or organizations as leaders and thank them for their participation. I'm now going to turn it over to Nira Johri.
Thanks, Sherry, and hello and welcome to everybody to day 2. I'm Nira Johri. I have the unique privilege of leading both diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, and sustainability for Rich Products, headquartered in Buffalo, New York. And we're super excited today to kick off our second keynote panel that's going to cover acquiring and retaining talent through the SDGs. I would love to welcome our panelists to join me. So if you could turn your cameras and your microphones on, I'll just begin with our introductions. Glenn Jackson is the Chief Diversity Officer at M&T. He's responsible for advancing M&T's efforts in promoting diversity, inclusion, and belonging for all colleagues across the company. He's a board member of the Western New York Impact Investment Fund, a chair of Teach for America Buffalo, and a board member of the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo and Project Play Western New York. Dee Rapaport is a global social mission officer for Ben & Jerry's, leading the iconic Vermont-based ice cream company's commitment to be a force for good in their day-to-day impacts of their operations and value chain, and using their influence as a business through activism campaigns promoting progressive social change. Racial equity is a major component of this work. He has been a mission-driven activist for more than 30 years, spanning the business, nonprofit, and government sectors. And last but not least, John Summers is the president and CEO of Harmech Medical Products, Inc., a contract engineering and manufacturing company of single-use medical devices for Fortune 500 med tech companies. Harmech has been honored for its operations excellence and community investment. Located in the heart of Buffalo's East Side, Harmech Medical Products has led a collaboration of community partners focused on improving and supporting their surrounding neighborhood that has faced considerable challenges, including poverty and neglect. Welcome to all of our panelists. We'll kick right off into the questions. We'd love to hear from you. Please use the chat to share your insights, what resonates with you. We want this to be interactive, and you also have an opportunity to post questions in the Q&A. If you're shy, you can also be anonymous in your Q&A. I think we have an opportunity to bring people to the actual stage, our virtual stage. We'll see how that goes. We're all a little bit nervous about the technology today, so let's kick off with the panelists, and then we'll try to go live. But our first question, and Dave, maybe you can kick us off, is how does your organization think about the people pillar, or the S of ESG? We also committed to try to be less alphabet soup today. So ESG, for those of you new to the space, is environmental, social, and governance. So the S is the social piece. Dave, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Nira, and hi, everybody. So I lead Ben & Jerry's social mission team, and the social mission, along with our product mission and our economic mission, are the three-part mission that really intertwine to drive Ben & Jerry's business. And so concern with social issues, social justice, equity, and the social side of sustainability, along with the other aspects of sustainability, are really interwoven into the way we do business. And my team advances those values of the social mission through the direct impact we have as a business, as well as the ways in which we try to influence society as a whole. And one of the ways we talk about that is through creating linked prosperity. And so for us, the S is really about ensuring that everybody who touches the business benefits from it. And so that takes a great many forms, from ensuring that we're paying a living wage to commitments around improving livelihoods in communities across the globe where we source ingredients like cocoa, as well as the work we do with NGO partners to advance these social values within society through our fan-facing activism campaign. So there's a whole variety of ways in which this is really central to Ben & Jerry's, and we really wouldn't be here as a business if our co-founders, Ben and Jerry, hadn't found a way to use the business to advance those values.
Thanks, Dave. Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, Nira, and thank you again for having me and M&T Bank here. I was going to start a fight in the chat, and Sherry said Cornell, and then someone else said Go Big Red, and I was going to throw a thumbs down and start booing as my sister went to Cornell. So we have a little bit of infighting there and battle around which is the better school. So anyway, thank you for having me. Thank you for the West New York SBR and all the leadership there, as well as the members. Here's how I think about this. We at the bank, we talk about making a difference in people's lives. But there's really one critical component and ingredient, and that's our talent. We're a talent-driven organization. And frankly, at the center of this, and you look at the title of this today, it's about people and prosperity. It's about people, right? How do you start? And where you start with everything, it always circles back to our people. And just of late in the journey we're on, just to give you some insight, we started with our people. Sounds so simple. We asked them questions like, what would you have to see at this bank here that you'd want to be here, that you felt like you belonged here, that you could aspire to be whatever it is you choose to be? And they told us three things. They said, frankly, we'd have to be able to see ourselves, right? Think of diversity in every single definition of the word. We'd have to be able to see ourselves at every part of the organization. We'd have to be able to truly be our best authentic selves. And if you allowed for that and created an environment of inclusion where we're our best selves to work every day, imagine what we could truly do for the communities that we do some amazing work today. Imagine what we could do to answer some complex questions if you start with your people who are of the communities that are closest to the challenges that frankly we've been trying to solve for a very long time, but it's not top down, it's bottoms up. So we're leveraging our talent in ways that I could not have possibly imagined to help solve for problems that they're best situated to help us serve, and empowering our folks to do that has been one of the most impressive things I've seen and exciting. But it's going to be hard. So it's going to take collaboration like this. It's going to be taking us breaking down silos between organizations, between public and private, lock arms and start to walk this walk together. So thanks again for having us. I'm excited about this panel.
Thanks, Glenn. John, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here. Western New York Sustainability Group has done a great job, and I'm hoping, we might be able to get a deal with Dave on the side with Ben & Jerry's after we're on this panel. We'll have to negotiate that. But, Harmac is celebrating our 40th year. As Nori said, we're an international contract engineering and manufacturing company in the medtech space, and we too believe people are the most paramount element of our company. And, we strongly believe that the company needs to give a lot more to our employees than just a check for 40 hours worth of work. And so we developed our vision about 14 years ago. I'm sure everybody on this call has done that, but getting your company down to 13 words is not the easiest thing. And so after about a year of conversations across our leadership team, we realized that we're about the patients we serve, we're about our employees, and we're about the communities in which we live. And Harmac is in the ecosystem of the medtech space, and the patients are our customers' patients, but we still feel that we're a critical player there. And so whatever the role an employee has at Harmac, whether they're an engineer designing automation, an operator building a device, or frankly, someone cleaning up the outside of the building and making the place look professional so people are full of energy, they're all part of the patient that we're serving. And then on the employee side, employees come here from all different breadths of life. We have over 40 nationalities represented, and we feel that we need to do more. And so we have programs for college scholarships, one-on-one financial training. We have an on-site vegetable market. In the inner city, it's hard to find a fresh vegetable, so people can walk out with a box of fresh fruit. And we also have a fun program in which we send employees, children and grandchildren to a free week of summer camp. And that gets some exposure to groups like Buffalo Seminary, International Girls School, football camp, or the Science Museum. And in the end, we say that Harmac is changing the lives of patients, employees, and the communities in which we work. And those are the three pillars on which we stand as a company. So it's great to be here, and I'm happy to talk more about this as the questions continue.
That's great. And I think you each hit on part of what my next question is our is we're preaching to the choir. Everyone here is passionate about sustainability or working to learn more and embed it into their daily lives. And I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what have been the most powerful motivators for you to drive this people-oriented impact. And then let's also go into some of the challenges. I don't think we often enough talk about the things that get in our way, the things that are hard. So I think our best discussions are probably ones where I let you guys interact and then chime in with some additional questions. So I'll leave it to you to kick us off. What are your motivators and what are your challenges?
Did you want me to continue? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it, John.
Sure. I think, one of the things, I think it's all about giving employees a sense of purpose and a sense of why. And the community piece of our mission is really done that. And, in general, employees live near where they work. And so we have programs, whether it's in Tijuana, Mexico for our location there, or Castlereagh, Ireland, outside of Galway in Ireland, or in the inner city in Buffalo. And about 12 years ago, I'll talk about the Buffalo program. We almost moved out of this area. We spend about $250,000 a year for armed security to keep our employees safe. And we almost moved out of town. We realized that 25% of our employees lived in the zip code. And so with that, we said we can't abandon our employees. And so we started this program called Bailey Green, and Bailey is on Bailey Avenue where we're located on the east side, and green is what the Europeans call park. So we thought it was a great play on words, Bailey Green. And that began our mission to bring kind of hope, safety, and opportunity into the 65-acre neighborhood. And, as we did this, we've grown partnerships. We have Habitat for Humanity is building their 14th house in the area. One of the programs that they did when we started, they built 5 houses on this first street, and we helped financially do that. And after they built the 5 houses, 3 of the people came to Harmac for an interview, and we hired them. And so, all of a sudden, we're bringing new families into the east side. They're working for us as employees. And I think that, those were programs that help align our people. One other quick story, we were talking about the summer camps. And, we had one woman who was working in our technical area, and she only had a high school degree. And she said, nobody in our family has gone to college. And so one summer we sent her daughter to Buffalo Seminary, as I mentioned, is a great international girls' school. Her daughter loved it so much, she went back for a second week. She then said, Mom, I want to go to a better high school. They changed high schools. And 2 years ago, she graduated from college. So, I mean, I think, those stories, and we talk a lot about stories, but those are the kind of stories that provide a lot of motivation and engagement from our employees and help us build a world in which they know that they're needed and they know that they're cared for.
I got to learn about John without him knowing it as one of the initiatives that the bank supports at the Buffalo Promise neighborhood. So we were neighbors there for a while, and so many good stories come out of Harmac and John under your leadership. Nira, let me tell you this: our motivator is our people, right? Everything I'm going to tell you today, it always goes back to our people. One of the most powerful moments we've had in the last 18 months is we started this new approach called journey mapping. And we've essentially gone to our colleagues, right? And if you organize people, especially when you think about bias and how it sits, and you think about our biggest deficits in talent at the top of the organization. So you have a lack of women, you have a lack of people of color, keep going down the line. We started there. And we started to have conversations with women, for instance, and talking about what is the bottleneck in your career, and what do you see? And what you find is, depending on who you're talking to and what group you're speaking with, there's common issues and challenges you see, right? We journey mapped women, and we're journey mapping the Black experience and Latinx. And what you find is, throughout every single one of these journeys, we're finding out that sponsorship is extremely important. If you do not have a sponsor or a mentor, your ability to navigate the organization is slowed down by 2 to 3 times. So it's those things we start to activate very quickly, but in some cases it's nuanced, right? If you happen to be a woman who decides to start a family, right? And frankly, do you have to put your career on pause, right? So disaggregating the data has allowed us to see the nuance and also the commonality where we can start to build responses and solutions to these things. Our most recent journey is an incredible one. It's the Black experience. And I think Stephanie Tisdale is part of this group here that's helping to lead the charge. And frankly, what we're finding is a lot of pain points. And then you have to take it and find out through these personas that you understand where the pain is in that experience. And frankly, what's amazing about the whole thing is, and I'll lead to the challenges, the motivators are the people in these stories. But ultimately, until you connect those pain points and those bottlenecks to the actual systems and make systemic changes, you won't do anything at all. So the challenge becomes, is your bias so thick that you can't actually see or feel those pain points? And frankly, we all struggle with bias. So we're also, as we're doing this, we're simultaneously unpacking unconscious bias personally and professionally. Where is it showing up in my spaces personally? And then how do we ideate and make sure that we're ridding it and pulling it out of our systems where we decision people and do these things in this way we're actually sort of inequitably managing through. And frankly, it's been amazing. So we're not there yet. But it's leading us to spaces to get more bold as to say, we need more women in leadership. So in the next 3.5 years, we've got to get to gender parity. We need more Black leaders in the organization. So in the next 3 years, we've got to triple the amount of leadership. We need more Latinx. Just keep going down the line. And as we journey map disabilities, LGBTQ, as we journey map veterans, we are going to continue to find the commonality, which is about 80%, that we could build tools for everyone, and then make sure we have the nuance so we can make sure the experience for each in every group and person in this bank ultimately is equitable. So that to me is the most sort of the motivators, the people, the challenges, the bias, and then we'll talk later, but we extend that out now. How do we support the community in the same specific way?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Glenn and John, listening to you guys, you so clearly express a passion and a sense of your own motivation that is motivating for all of us to hear about, and clearly motivating within your respective companies. And that's certainly, been our experience at Ben & Jerry's. These things are intertwined with our identity and I think really draw people to want to work at Ben & Jerry's and certainly account for the very low turnover we have and people being willing to go above and beyond in their jobs. And so that's, a key piece for us. But, it's our journey, your journeys in some ways were inside out. You're looking at the experience of your own employees. Ours was sort of the opposite. It was outside in. We have long been involved with activism. Half dozen years ago, going down to North Carolina to learn and assist the Moral Mondays movement, Reverend William Barber. We've had the opportunity to work with people like Desmond Meade with the Florida Rights Restoration Project that successfully waged this campaign to pass a ballot measure to restore voting rights to people who'd been convicted and served their time, convicted of felonies, and whose franchise had been taken away. And so many of the activists that we've had a chance to work with, we even had the late Representative John Lewis come to the office and make ice cream with us. So we have these motivations from the outside to the outward facing work that we've done. But I'll tell you where we've really, frankly, I don't know if it's a stumble, but where we have come up short. We are still an overwhelmingly white company. Our franchise network is overwhelmingly white. I'm sure our supply base is overwhelmingly white. And so learning how to truly walk our talk has been our great challenge. And we can talk more about the kinds of things that we've been doing to address it. But it's something that we've had to really grapple with honestly, and also understand that it isn't simply a matter of doing trainings and self-education on implicit bias and learning about systemic racism, to actually get down to the business of dismantling the institutional racism that is leading to the complexion of our company is deep and hard work, and it's a journey that we have really been committed to, but it's one that takes a lot of time as well. So as the conversation goes on, perhaps we can dig more into those things.
Dave, that is an interesting comment, because I'd like to say we're all on a journey, and I think we've made some great impact, but there's miles to go. And I think, we find that too. And I think, we're talking about, how have we stumbled? And I think, I think we, do we overcommit and underdeliver? I mean, that's always a balance. I think it's important for companies to have a big vision. And, this whole, it's a little bit cliche, but, think global and act local, even within your own company. And I think that's what Harmac tries to do. We have a big vision about our vision of patients, employees, and communities. And we talk about honesty, integrity, and respect of our culture. And then we try and go down to specific actions across each division. And they're not always successful, but I think it's the momentum and the alignment of the vision that keeps everything moving in the same direction.
Both Dave and John, here's how I look at and I'm so thankful to be on this and hear your stories. Dave and John, how I thought of this last week when we had sort of this prep call, how I think of your organizations and your leadership, it's almost as if you've created culture from the start. So we had a conversation, Dave, and I thought it was amazing, because I think we asked the question, like, what's acceptable and what's not? And essentially, if your customers don't align with your beliefs in your mission and purpose, they're just customers, right? And you're just like, you just didn't come with us for the ride. And to me, and John, you're doing the same thing there. And it's fascinating. What I've found is, and I'm going to talk about and I don't want to pull that out of both of you. We're in the banking business, which has been around forever. And so all of the systems we've created have been created a long time ago, and we're pressing the same buttons and levers. And where we find ourselves as an organization is realizing we have to shift and transform the culture. So this came out of recognizing we just anchored ourselves and reestablished mission to make a difference in people's lives. We talk about our values: collaboration, curiosity, candor, integrity, and now we have the roadmap, but we also have to get into a space, as we're sort of up in a 747 and swapping out the engines here. At some point, it's going to be in your heart and soul. At some point, people know if they want to be your customers. And frankly, at some point, your employees and your customers recognize, and frankly, you recognize and they recognize this is not their mission and purpose. And if those values don't align, frankly, you shouldn't be on that train. And frankly, we should be okay opting you out. So I thought you guys could talk a little bit about that, because this is a cultural transformation that's underway. And the other thing I wanted to point at, and I think it's so important, there are no more silos, right? And if you think it's us versus them, be it a corporation, be it a public-private, if you're not reaching across and sharing these learnings and these nuggets of information, you're missing the point. So it's on us, right, to create the ecosystems of collaboration so we can solve complex problems. So I want to throw that back to you, because I thought it was so fascinating.
Yeah.
From the bottom up created culture.
Yeah. John, I think maybe you're alluding to the part of our previous conversation where I referenced what Ben Cohen had said, which is that the closest relationship you can have with your consumers is over shared values. And so one of the things that we've done well is be clear about our values and go out there with them. And we have attracted, a lot of fans who really share those values, and we do have a very close relationship with them. And so that's been, I think, a key to the sort of secret sauce that we have. And part of that is, although the heavy byproduct of all this is a tremendous business value. We do have those close aligned relationships. We know those fans that know about our social mission are more loyal, and they buy more ice cream. We also know that if we were to do the things we're doing for the purpose of building the brand or selling ice cream, we lose that magic. And so we look at those things separately. But in terms of the internal cultural change, that's a deep journey, and for us, what we have done is we've had a lot of help. We've had guides, that have been very valuable to us, who really, live in this world of racial equity, and they've helped us to do a lot of exploration as to what the root causes are of the things that we have to dismantle in the company. What are those barriers? And to begin to develop strategies. And when you think about strategies for culture, I mean, it's fascinating, right? Because it's, you're talking about belonging. How do you create a sense of belonging? And the strategies that you embark on have to be aimed at changing the people in the company that are already here, which means we're changing the behavior of white people, right? So how do you measure that? You don't just say we're going to have goals to be more diverse. How can you measure whether or not the white folks in the company are actually behaving in ways that create a more welcoming environment where everybody feels they can belong and do their best work? And it's really challenging to come up with those metrics, let alone to make that move that has to be made. But that's the kind of thing that we're beginning to do in order to change the culture in ways that are going to enable the real achievement of equity, which along with it will bring the diversity through that sense of inclusion.
I'll jump in here. One of the things that we've done to do that is we have small groups get together. So we have kind of a breakfast, lunch, or dinner on site with like 8 employees and myself and another one of the leaders. And we kind of have an ice-breaking discussion about, let's all share something we don't know about one another. And then from there, we say, what do you like about Harmac? What don't you like about Harmac? What should we do differently? And it's amazing kind of what happens with these conversations. I might have mentioned in our pre-call, so Glenn, that we have many Muslims that work here, and we were talking to them, and this was actually just a lunch conversation. I said, hey, you guys are great. What can we do to help? I was just talking to 3 or 4 people, and they said, we love a place where we can pray and have a place where we can wash our feet. I said, we can do that. And it's sometimes small actions that show recognition and caring for others that make a big impact. And we put those in place, and they were grateful, and everybody's one team. And also with mothers, we put in a lactation room, and it's one of those things. Like you were saying, Glenn, how do you work with people? People have all different needs. And we've found that these small pieces really help connect the people, and they help connect them to us and us to them. So it is one family. And then just the one last thing I'll throw out is, as we, a couple of years ago, I think one of the challenges we have is, some of our employees have challenges with transportation or elderly care or younger children. And so we brought a social worker on board, and the social worker is not our employee, but she works here 50% of the time. And every new employee meets with a social worker. And, our hope is that, we know Harmac can't solve poverty, but our hope is if we take one step outside of our building to kind of improve an individual's process or challenge, it will be better for them and better for us. And so those are the kind of things that we've done. And I think we're really finding the social worker is connecting these individuals with outside services on a one-on-one basis. And those are just some of the pieces we're building to build our foundation and create a stable company.
Thank you. And I think that's I think we've touched on so many different themes that we wanted to bring out of this conversation around how do we create that sense of belonging for every associate, right? And when we talk about inclusion, it's really the simplest way to understand that is exclusion, right? When have you in your life felt like you didn't belong? And we never want anybody in our organizations to feel that way. So the changes that you make to those systems and to the culture allow us to get to those places and spaces. I wanted to go also, all of you are important leaders of your organizations. And I think I heard something recently that said inclusive leaders cast a long shadow. And I think that's a very, very powerful statement of everyone in your organization is watching the steps that you take, looking at what you do. And sometimes this space, as Glenn was mentioning, is new. It might be something that you don't understand or a perspective you don't have. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about where and how you've made space for employees to share their needs with you. We've already come up with a couple of those examples, but how you can and how others can create that space to hear from those that might be better informed on an issue than you are.
You know what? First of all, I do want to also talk to the chat. We got called out for mansplaining, and I do want to qualify what just happened. Nira's running this whole thing, so even in the prep work, she's like, "Listen, I'm going to let you guys bounce off of each other for a little bit." So Abigail, it may have appeared to be mansplaining, but we were just marching to Nira's orders. So I want to make sure that people understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So let me say this, and here's what's worked for us. And we're on an evolution. Everything's evolving, and we're continuously trying to improve and make it better. It started with what I would call resource groups, right? So we've gone from our first resource group stood up. It was our women's group about 12 years ago. Now we've got 13 charters, 70 chapters, and 6,000 of our 17,000 colleagues like directly associated with resource groups and help us sort of find those and create those safe ecosystems, and then find commonality in the problems and challenges, and then help present that and start to activate on those. What we're finding though is those behaviors has been very helpful to create those safe spaces. They're now starting to blend and collaborate. Right? We're watching people take those behaviors and start to apply them to their everyday life, where now people are starting to coach on one-on-one. They're starting to ask better and smarter questions of just their colleagues. Right? Instead of having to feel like I could have to show up at a resource group to have a hard conversation, they're now starting to have difficult conversations in spaces that they're sort of always sitting in their day job. So I don't know if we knew that's where it would go, but it's the recipe to start sort of disaggregate, let people get into their lanes where they're comfortable. And as they build up those muscles and the behaviors around, having hard conversations, they're now the people and the leaders in the bank that are helping us navigate all 17,000 people through very difficult conversations. They're creating safe spaces side by side in their day jobs to ask tougher questions, to try to get to better solutions with the people that actually are better served and closer to the challenges. So it is creating culture. It is a cultural transformation. I'll say this, corporate, for the first 100 years of corporations, maybe the number is 87 or 88 years, what did they tell you? Don't you dare bring anything to work. You get in your box and you do your day job, and that's it. If you start talking about, name that thing you shouldn't talk about. We just flipped the whole script. Now it's, oh my goodness, we're starting to talk about things that are sort of highly personal, but they're highly important and painful. How do you do that in an important way? So I think we're midstream on this, but we're frankly just teaching people how to get closer, how to ask better questions, how to lead with empathy, and how to drive with solutions as we collaborate forward.
Yeah, I suspect that we're all somewhere in the continuum that you described there. For us, we've tried to promote these kinds of conversations in a variety of ways, and I guess I want to first say that the point made in the chat is an interesting one, because I think it also sort of reveals this thing that we haven't really talked about, which is that I can't claim to know what it's like to be, the only Black person in a room, right? Let alone, what has been too often so typical of the Black experience in America. The talk that Black mothers and fathers have to give to their kids, as they get to a certain age, around how to behave around police officers and all the rest of that stuff. So just as a learning about my privilege as a white man has been a really important part of the journey, and something that we're also trying to create space for, so that we can shut up and listen when it's really appropriate to do that. But for us, I mentioned the guides that we've had. We worked with a group that helped us form various teams that dove into different parts of the internal underlying causes that we had uncovered, and developed strategies. We had about 10% of our employee base serving on one team or another that put in over 1,000 hours in total of work together. A lot of that was, these deep conversations, Glenn, that you were talking about. We've also done a lot to bring in external resources to promote these conversations. So because of the work we do externally, we know a lot of folks that are, leading thinkers in this area. So we have had Ibram Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, virtually with us, leading conversations. We have a relationship with the Smithsonian Museum on African American Culture, History and Culture, and their staff has actually joined us virtually to lead discussions and kind of reading groups. We've had a whole number of others. Sheila Jackson Lee, the member of Congress who's introduced H.R. 40, the reparations bill. So we've tried to create these spaces, and they're not always easy. I mean, some of the things that we get out in front on and say are controversial, and we have people with all kinds of opinions about those things internally as there are externally. And it's not, when people have differing views, it takes a lot of patience as leaders to really ensure that everybody has the psychological safety to kind of speak, and that can happen in a way that doesn't create a sense of a lack of safety on those who are, feeling, on the other side of that. And it can be as much, a person of color feeling uncomfortable as somebody in the company whose family is in law enforcement, right? I mean, there's all of those dynamics that go on, and learning how to get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations is a key part of it.
Yeah, and I think, the people in leadership need to create the atmosphere so that it is safe to bring up those questions and challenges. And, I think that's a key piece. And I think how do you lead with humility, and you want to bring the best out in people. And, we've worked a lot with the International Institute, and Eva Hassett runs a great group. And, with all the different backgrounds, sometimes for some reason people feel awkward talking to people. And, one of their people said, just sit down next to someone and say, hey, I've never, you're new here, and I'd love to hear more about your background, and just simple, open questions that have no innuendos. And, it's amazing the conversations that you can have, and, set up things like buddy systems with employees, so that someone who's worked there is working with a new person and showing them the ropes, because, every company can have hundreds of pages of the welcome manual, but there's not a better welcome than a person who says, hey, let's spend a couple of weeks together. And every time we have a break, we'll have lunch and we'll talk. And so I think it is that inclusiveness. And I think, like we've been saying, I think, companies try and set the vision at the highest level. And at the same time, it's a per person actions. It's those things that really move it along and create the trust and opportunity for everybody.
One of the things we've been talking a lot about in the DEI space is, how do you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? It's really tough to be the person who speaks up. So thank you, Abigail, for saying, hey, I think a thing is happening here. Can we address that? And then also to give space to explain the intent of what is happening. I think it's not easy. And I think creating that space in these conversations is even more important. So thanks. And I'm glad we were able to model that today. We have a question in our Q&A. So if you have questions, please pepper them in there. This one is around 6 of the 17 SDGs actually have to do with people, but people always go to the environmental side or think it's about saving the planet or saving the trees or the bunnies, as our question asker has said here. So how do you communicate the importance of the people, the centricity of that to achieving those long-term goals for 2030 for what we're all trying to achieve through the Sustainable Development Goals?
I'm not probably the person to speak on this, but we can't save bunnies and trees without people, right? Like we can't get around a table and figure out the solution for this without really good people that get it. And the other thing I'll just say is I love that line, Dave, you used, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It isn't easy, Nira, as you said. It feels damn near impossible at times, but every single thing, you spend the first half of your life being uncomfortable all the time, learning amazing things, and your eyes light up as a little kid learns to take its first step in the tent, and they just keep doing that over and over. And then something happens where you all decide that's uncomfortable, therefore I'm going to get into my safety zone and hunker down and do nothing. This is a paradigm shift. Getting comfortable being uncomfortable has to be a paradigm shift, and it all does start with people. So I'm going to stop babbling on it, but Dave and John could do a better job talking about how do we make sure that it doesn't matter if it's 6 of the 17 or 1 of the 17. None of the 17 will work and figure out sustainability and the environment in total without people.
I think one of the ways to make sure people are part of the conversation to invite some Gen Zers into the discussion. I think they get it a lot more, certainly than people of my generation. All of what we've seen happening, this huge, true awakening that occurred over the past year, as an example, has been often led by young people, and they're demanding that we pay attention to this stuff, and they don't see the difference between working on environmental causes and these social issues. They see that it's really all one big set of issues that we have to tackle at once, and that addressing these social concerns are central to being able to achieve these environmental concerns that white people of a certain, relative privilege have long championed. So I'm actually very optimistic that we're going to be seeing a lot more of a real integration of all of these SDGs as we go forward.
And I think on there's a new comment that came up because about uncomfortable conversations, and they are difficult. I can give you an experience of this Bailey Green thing is a 65-acre neighborhood, and a couple of people asked me as a white guy who runs an international company and grew up in a neighborhood like that, but have I met with every single family in Bailey Green? And I said, I haven't. I don't feel comfortable doing that. But what I do is I talk to people one person at a time. I only know how to build relationships one person at a time. And I have walked down multiple streets, and we have a neighbor, Henry Wright. We call him the mayor of Bailey Green. He's 80 years old. And when I went walking through there 5 years ago, he goes, "Hey buddy, can you help me out? I need a new garage door." I'm like, "We'll get that done." And I shook his hand, and I said, 2 months later we had a new garage door. And then other people, we rebuild porches and things like that. And so I guess what I'm saying is I think we all have to be authentic, and I think we still need to create this environment that's safe to bring up those challenging items. But that's not any kind of grandiose comment, but I think creating safety for people to be themselves is really the next step. And then how do you get people to kind of push through these uncomfortable discussions and make it safe to ask those questions and ask them in a respectful manner, right? I think we talk about honesty, integrity, and respect at our company. And a lot of people say that's apple pie. I'm like, well, it might be apple pie to you, but we say to all our employees, if you don't like to work with a company that focuses on those values, there are plenty of other companies to work for. And I think that's a basis that, our goal is to include everybody and people from all walks of life. But, it's still difficult to kind of push through that, the tension on the top of the water, it goes over the top and you need to kind of poke it for the water to go over. And I think the same sort of thing about these uncomfortable conversations. So not easy.
So I wanted to bridge two of the questions that we have together, and one is around in certain organizations, it is easier to bring your authentic self to work, and in others, it isn't. And it feels like you're all working in your organizations to make that possible for the people that work there. And I'm wondering also how that goes back to something, Dave, you had said earlier around aligning on values with your customers. That's true also for suppliers, for franchisees, for whoever it might be in the breadth of your organization. So what do you do when it doesn't align? What do you do when you feel like you can't be your authentic self, right? What advice do you have for either the employees or the associates in those organizations, or the partners or customers that you're working with that don't match up? It could be from many different angles that alignment that you're seeking doesn't actually happen.
I guess, ultimately, if you're asking me, my answer is go find someplace else to work or somebody else to buy stuff from. I mean, there's a lot of good ice cream out there, and if you feel like your values are so unaligned with ours that you don't want to buy it, Ben & Jerry's, then that's okay. I think we have to ultimately take a stand for what we believe in, and I'm not advocating that we don't care or that we belligerence, but I do think that, and Glenn pointed this out earlier, ultimately you've got to sort of make some choices here. I think that for those of you who are in the audience who are students and looking out at the job world, remember that employers are competing for you every bit as much as you're competing to get hired by them, and you shouldn't hesitate to sort of interview us when you're sitting in that hot seat, the proverbial interviewee chair, and ask, what are you doing to allow your employees to bring their values to work? How are you advancing these things? It's I think that we all have to we have to, as has been pointed out, things have changed. We now know that it's ridiculous to sort of leave your values at the door when you go to work, and then, just kind of do them in the off hours when the majority of your time and energy are spent at work. We need to find ways so that this enterprise that we're devoting so much of our time and energy to can be an expression of who we want to be in the world, and employers that don't figure out how to make that happen are really going to be the ones who get outcompeted, frankly. They're going to lose employees of value and consumers of value.
What people, and Dave, I love what you said, what people thought was the right thing to do, frankly, is the only thing to do if you want to be relevant in the future. And I don't mean just like people like you. I mean real economic consequences to you not figuring this out, because we're talking about experiences, be it our talent or our customers and consumers. It's all the same. If you're providing a poor experience, they will opt out. And frankly, if they opt out, the more they do, the less money you make, the less customers you have, and the less good employees you have. And frankly, you'll get to the point where your relevance will cease to exist because you can't possibly sustain that anymore. And that's the moment we're in right now. So if you aren't finding a way to get closer to the challenges and the customers you don't have today, the employees you don't have, and you're not supporting equitably today, you will not be around tomorrow. So I think for a while, 10 years ago, it was like, diversity, it's nice and it's soft and squishy. No, this actually, if you want to talk about economics here, you will have less and less customers over time to the point where you will no longer be relevant. And as a bank, right, the sooner we can figure this out as any organization, the better off we're going to be. And now you're solving complex problems for issues. The other thing I'll say is this, and we have to remember this. If I say one name right now, 50 people will hate it and 50 people will love it. We're in this space where we've convinced ourselves that we're right all the time, no matter where you are in the space. So I would say this, I hesitate for a moment and say you have to give everyone, including yourself, an opportunity to get on the train. Know what the values are, know what your purpose is, eat, sleep, and breathe it, right? And then the train pulls away. I'm not going to go and cast any judgment on somebody because I disagree with something you say, but I'm not conflating sort of racism with politics or misogyny with politics here. There is no conflation to be had. It is what it is, and you know what it is when you see it. So let's stop playing that game. But at the end of the day, you have to create the best experiences for your employees, who will then impart and create the best experiences for your customers. And if you do that, you'll be the best at whatever it is you choose to do, hands down.
Yeah, and we have to determine, what kind of a business we want to create, and agreed, Glenn, absolutely. I mean, we want to build this vision, and we want the people who agree with that vision to jump on the train. We had a side comment. We had a customer who was berating our employees. We had 10 people in a room, and 2 of our leadership hit mute, and they apologized to our employees. They asked them to leave the room, and then they unmuted and they said, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, I'm really sorry that you're acting this way. This is out of alignment with our cultural norms here, and we're not going to put up with it. So we'd love to be your supplier. If you choose to go somewhere else, that's fine. But we just need to realign the situation, because we treat people with honesty, integrity, and respect. And you hope that all your customers don't do that, because then we're out selling ice cream. But I think there are boundaries, and I think depending on how you act on those, you need to support who you are. Otherwise, you're nobody. And I think they're challenging, but I think all these comments lead up to it, that we want to determine who we are, and we have to have that vision that's inclusive. And I think employees do choose to work for companies who are leading, empowering, and I mean, doesn't anybody want to come to a place to work that's encouraging, exciting? They love diversity, and they love bringing these ideas to the table, and you get a chance to show who you are and implement it in your product or your service or your value. So, I mean, I think that's the hope. That's for sure. Not an easy journey, but that's the intent.
It's powerful to be able to disconnect from those people that don't line up, and whether that's saying go buy elsewhere, go work elsewhere, right? I think that is a really, really powerful signal, and I hope that we don't always have choices as individuals to walk away from our workplaces, but I think it's a really smart advice to shop smarter in the first instance, and to make sure that you're ending up in a place that works for you. So my last question, we just have 1 minute left. So this work can be challenging, it can be frustrating, it can be defeating, it can be slow. And so what do you do to stay personally resilient? How do you wake up every day energized and optimistic, and lead in ways that inspire others?
Ending with an easy question, is that how this works? I'll just give a comment. I mean, it's true. I think it is hard to stay motivated, and I think for me, it's the little things that keep me motivated. We were talking before about companies have these big pictures, and I think in order to achieve the big pictures, it's thousands of little steps by thousands of people, and I think it's those moments where you get the aha. There was a situation 6 years ago. I was standing outside looking across the street, and this is a rough neighborhood, but we converted, we tore down 7 houses, and we planted 150 trees and put in 4 acres of green space. And this beat up car drove down the street, and it stopped right in front of me, and I backed up, and this lady rolled down the window. She goes, "Buddy, I've been driving by here for 7 years, and you're doing an unbelievable job. Keep up the good work." And I think, those are the kind of things that keep me moving. And we had another scenario with a woman who retired from our company back in the 70s, and we met her 3 years ago. And she said, "I've been trying to buy this abandoned lot of land next to me for years from the city, because I love growing vegetable gardens." And our vice president of administration, Ellen Burkhardt, her and our partners in this Bailey Green thing, she says, "Well, look into it." It happened to be a piece of land that we had bought through an auction, and we said, here you go. We'll do a big transaction for $1, and because we had to do that for all the paperwork, and we were able to give it to her, and it changed her mindset. And so I think it's those little things. It's the people that make a positive impact. And anyway, that's how I try and keep energized. Not easy, but just a couple thoughts.
I'll just say, agreed. It's not always easy to stay motivated. I think one of the things that motivates me is just, this is an amazing learning journey, and I've put in a lot of effort to educating myself over time, and My bookshelf is filled with all kinds of stuff like the book Biased by Dr. Jennifer Eberhard, who's one of the foremost researchers at Stanford on how implicit bias works in the brain. I mentioned Ibrahim Kendi and his book earlier. The book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson is another great one. So just, really, pushing yourself to learn is a big thing, but just seeing the impact of what we do and what others in this movement do in the outside world, the organizations we work with that are making real change in the world. The fact that all of these folks got re-enfranchised in Florida, that the city of St. Louis is closing this notorious jail where they housed pretrial detainees who were just there because they couldn't afford bail. The coalition that we worked with to do that, or just the letters or the emails we get from our fans. There was a woman who wrote to talk about a Black woman, talked about her daughter. They had just moved to a new town. She didn't feel like she fit in. She was looking for a place to feel safe, and the one place she felt she could feel safe was at a Ben & Jerry's scoop shop in town, because she knew about us and what we did. So there's those kinds of things that John, you talked about all these stories of individual transformation. Focus on those things, and much healthier and more motivating than some of the bad news out there.
And I'll try to be quick here. I want to thank Dave, John, and Nira. It's about people, and in this case, what's keeping me sane and not losing my mind is all of you. For the first time in my life in the last few years, there's a network of individuals that think this way and are starting to move us forward. And I think most of us probably felt like we were alone, and we isolated, and it was exhausting, and we'd find other ways to cope that probably were not healthy at all. But stitching it together, and that's why I would say we shouldn't wait another year to have this conversation. We've got to continue to evolve. And I know, Nira, you're tapped in with the team here at M&T, and you're going to keep doing that. And frankly, the biggest motivator to me now is watching people aspire, achieve, and be successful. People that were not seen before because of systemic issues and challenges that the system had in place. So the more of those stories that we start to weave that into a movement instead of a moment. And I'm so excited about and hopeful about the future as we all knit this together and bring these communities together in a really big way. So thank you again for hosting us. This has been tremendous.
Thank you all for your honesty, your vulnerability, and sharing the good and the bad with us today. That's the end of our panel. If we were together, we would be giving you sustainable chocolates, but because we're not, we're going to make a donation on each of your behalf. We'll be in touch about that later. And we're going to send our participants off to network for the next 30 minutes. So again, there's vendor tables on the first floor, networking and table topics on the second floor. And Asa, I'm sorry, I sent you prompts, but I've forgotten to write them down for myself. So we'll send you the announcement of what the discussion prompts are virtually through the announcement system. So with that, we'll send you off. Thank you again to our panelists.